Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Photography. And today let's look at doing a one lens challenge. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean deliberately restricting yourself by only using one lens. So you go out to do some photography and you take one camera body and one lens with you, and that's it. If all you have to work with is zooms, well, pick one focal length and work with that one focal length. And if you have trouble sticking to that, well, put some tape around it so you can't move the ring. Whatever you do, you want to try to force yourself to use one single focal length. So I suppose I could call this the one focal length challenge as well. It'd be the same thing. So what's the idea behind that? Well, we can get into creative ruts at times, or we could be a bit intimidated by trying to be creative. I mean, when you're getting into photography and somebody says, well, you got to be creative, or, be creative with your photography, blah, blah, blah. You have to see things and all that kind of stuff. It can be intimidating and you may not know where to start. So when you're faced with stuff like that, whether you're in a rut or you're not satisfied with what you're producing, or you're just intimidated by the whole process, by restricting yourself to the simplest setup that you can get, one lens, one camera body, work it on manual, then all of a sudden things start to clear up. It becomes less complicated, less burdensome. You're not worried about too many things. You've reduced the load on your brain by just having one camera body and one lens. And that's as simple as it can get, really, when you go out there. And I mean, one of the best ways is if you have one of the Fujifilm X100s with a fixed lens, or a Ricoh GR. You've only got one lens. You can't take the lens off. It's fixed. Beautiful cameras to use for that kind of photography. And to expand your mind, it's expand the way you think about things by restricting the gear you're using. And that's really the idea behind this. And so how does that work in practice? Well, I've got two sets of photos here. One that was done with the 8mm on one trip, and the other one was done with my 90mm right here on the other trip. And I just went out with those one lenses, and I had a particular idea in mind, but not too rigid an idea. That's important. You set yourself a goal of what you want to take, what type of pictures you want to make, but you don't make it very specific, because that can be limiting. Too limiting. But at least have an idea before you go out, and have an end game for the photos. In my case, convert to black and white and make them look rather dramatic. So that's what I was after with these photos. And I went into the Burlington Beach and Pier area with the 8mm lens, and I went off to our local commercial fishery and a bunch of boathouses with the 90mm. And I had those in mind. I wanted to get the boathouses and the commercial fishery, turn into black and white, and see what I can get. So this is what I did, and I'll go through the process with these photos, and I'm not going to get too much in depth with the photos themselves beyond what I was thinking at the time. And I'm going to start off with this particular photo, which is actually a gap between two boathouses. And normally I wouldn't think of taking a photo of this, but this is a perfect example. I was kind of struggling to get the framing I wanted because I didn't have a lot of room. I couldn't back up very much. Perfect example of what happens when you use a telephoto in limited space, right? This is an example of the limitations. And I had to look for other things. I couldn't do what I wanted to do originally. So I had to look for something else. And I thought, you know what? Kind of abstract kind of thing. And kind of interesting, make it something a little different. And also, I mean, these boathouses, yeah, every photographer in our area has done these boathouses. I mean, there's nothing new here. But I saw the chairs and that awning stacked in front of the chairs, and I thought, let's do something with that. And so again, I'm looking at using the focal length to get that compression of the boathouses, making sure I had enough aperture to keep everything sharp and the depth of field adequate. But again, working with the 90mm, I could basically isolate those chairs. And this was a chain on the side of a fishing boat. And again, it's just like I'm looking at this chain, I'm thinking, that's cool. The light on it is quite cool. Let's see what I can do with that. I couldn't back up. I would have been in the water. So I had to frame it to get something out of that picture without stepping off the back of the pier and ended in the dock, I should say, and ended up in the water. So again, the physical limitation, you take what you can make out of that situation. And this is the same set of chains, different perspective, same problem. I can't back up. I'll use what I can get. And as I say, I'm playing also with the black and white here to get different effects. And this is a fishing net at the back of a fishing boat, shooting through windows in the fishing boat. Again, I'm on a dock, very limited space to maneuver. You have to get your angles just right and your framing just right. I had posts in the way, all sorts of different things like this. If you're using a zoom, you just sit there and zoom, zoom, zoom. If you've got multiple lenses, you're sitting in your bag and changing. If all you've got is this 90 on, or whatever lens you happen to be using, you have to create a photo with just that. And that's when the mind starts to open up. And this one is a perfect example of being able to use the 90 at f2 just to isolate that rope. I thought it was kind of funny. Somebody left the rope hanging over a post. So I guess they do that so they can grab it easily when their fishing boat comes alongside. But I thought it was rather interesting and sought to isolate it with the busy commercial fishery background that was behind it. So again, very simple thing. I'm still on the dock. I can't move around very much. You take what you can get, and you have to open up your mind to be able to see things because, that lens is not a zoom, and I'm not carrying any other lenses or any other cameras. I have to make it work. And that's the key, learning to make it work. And here's this door, and this is another case where I couldn't back up. There was a load of commercial fishery detritus behind me in big bins. There's a limit how far I could get back. So I would have normally liked to have got the air conditioner in the photo, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to angle it off so that air conditioner sits out there. It's a bit of a mystery as to what's going that way. And then you've got the birds on the door, and the door's in such terrible shape. I thought, I can work with that. And I backed up literally as far as I could to get the framing. Now, this is done with the 8mm. It's in the Burlington Pier. And again, this thing has been photographed 100 million times. I mean, there's nothing new about this. So using an 8mm here, which is a 12mm equivalent in full frame, and just getting hyper dramatic with the black and white, I sought to try and do something different with it. So here's an example of just exploiting curves. That's all that was. But I'm just walking around looking at things and thinking, what can I do? What's available? Because you're not going to do street photography with an 8mm lens. Well, I suppose you could, but it'd be kind of weird. You're going to be this far in front of somebody's face. But, the sky, I could make the sky dramatic. I could do some other things. There was something going on there. And this is a slightly different view of the same pier. And I took advantage of two women walking along together. And even though they're tiny in the view frame, because of the black and white, they stand out. And this was a couple. This is my closest I get to street photography. It's an older couple walking down the pier and, taking advantage of the clouds to sort of give that, this centering on them, giving it a little bit of a nostalgia look to it. And we have a small beach in Burlington, and it's a little municipal beach. You're certainly not going to win any awards with it. And the water was really churned up and muddy, so it's brown. So you're not going to use color. So I went with this rock and the sky and did something with it. Again, you see a stick. The beach is featureless. Again, I'm working with an 8mm. You've got to get right down on your hands and knees using the flip screen on the back of the camera and get the low angle shots. So I'm changing perspective, which is something else you have to do when you're limited with one lens. You just can't sit there standing upright, move backwards and forwards. You have to move all over the place, change levels, get down, get high, do whatever you need to do to get something interesting in the way of a shot. Being limited makes you think. So your equipment's limited, you open up your mind. You have lots of equipment, your mind tends to shut down. So that's basically it. One camera, one lens. Set yourself a goal. an end product, what you want the end product to look like in rough terms. Again, don't want to be too precise. And then just go out and try and do something with it. And take advantage of every physical limitation in the setup. Like I can't back up because I'll fall in the water, for example. Use all those limitations to be creative aids instead of being a problem. They become an opportunity. What can I get out of this shot because I'm so limited in the amount of room I have to work with? Or in the case of the 8mm, how can I simplify this shot and not get tons of unwanted stuff in the frame? Because with an 8mm it has such a huge angle of view, you've got to be really careful not to get a load of garbage in the frame that you don't want. I mean, there's houses all over the place, condos, you name it, other rocks sticking out all over the place, a long walkway. How can I get a shot that doesn't include all that other stuff that I don't want? So that's a kind of process that you have to go through when you're doing this that helps to open up your creativity and turn us into better photographers. Whether we're intimidated by the creative process, whether we're in a rut, or we're just unsatisfied generally with our creativity, this is the way you get out of it. And it's an exercise, just like working out to, lose weight or put on some muscle. You're doing the same thing with your creativity. You have to exercise it. And I know we all hate to exercise, but this is fun. So try it. The one lens challenge, or you can call it the one focal length challenge, however you want to view it. Just get out there, as I say, have a general goal of what you want and a general end product for the photos, and have some fun. Give it a try. Cheers.